Right now I'm trying to line up the A pillars. I mean, it's a little out of a line right here, but being as it has this old weld and it wasn't exactly lined up very good from the factory, I can split this and kind of bring it out. I always try to make sure that these lines here, you get these lines right, because if you don't, then your doors don't open and shut correctly whenever you get done. So I'm going to tack weld this in place, and then we'll go to the other side, do the other side, and then I'm going to split the inside right here just a little bit probably, and bring this back out so everything lines up like it's supposed to, and everything will be where it needs to be. All right, we've got the post tacked. Kind of see it there. Got kind of crudely tacked. It's not super great. I'll clean it up and weld it better. That's just temporary because I needed it to hold, because we're fixing to cut through the top of the roof, because we've got to fix this alignment, which is rather large, a little over an inch. But so what I'm gonna do here is, I've got these mark lines, you can see, I hope you can. We're gonna cut up here and make kind of a Z to go across through the top, so that we can separate it, and then we'll move this portion back. I may add a little piece to go here between the door, that way you can see right here between the door. That way you can, it'll kind of hold the roof up a little bit better until we get the back part tacked and the roof section tacked. That way everything stays square. All right, now that we've got this tacked in, I tacked in a couple of little pieces of square bar here just to kind of help hold this up, since I'm doing this by myself. Some people use straps and tie them from rafters and stuff, but this roof really, to me, isn't that heavy, at least not for me. And so I figure I'd just tack those in there temporarily, make my cuts, and move this back, and this will hold the front section of the roof up between those spots and this until we get this set in place and clamped. So I'm going to do that now. I've also measured these spots here, made sure they're even on both sides, and measured the windshield openings. There's some holes you can't really see up here in the cowl on the bottom that I used as reference points to measure to make sure everything's even. And I always leave the guards on my grinders most of the time. Every once in a while you get into a spot, but just for a little bit of safety. But it's, I guess, personal preference, but I would use them. There we go. And almost like magic, it came forward. Still got some cleanup work. Got a little alignment issue here. That kind of stuff usually happens. Plus I still got to grind the body filler out of the edges there. Probably should have done that first, but You can see the gap that we'll have to fill here to make this work. Shouldn't be too big of a problem. Like I said, I've done this before. We'll get some clamps in here, start clamping stuff together. And you can see I made this tab right here. That way it'll go in and it'll hold the top up. So that way. All right, now I'm gonna clean up a little in here. I've already cleaned up a little right there. That way it got decent metal to tack to, because you want clean metal. All of this is a little pitted and rusty, so it might be a little difficult, but we'll see. I'm using a MIG welder for most of my initial stuff. I've got a TIG welder. I may come back and TIG weld some of this, especially some of the stuff on the outside. But for my initial stuff, I like to MIG weld it. It just makes it faster and easier. You could actually MIG weld the whole thing and be just fine. It just depends on how much time you want to spend and that kind of thing, and the equipment you have. I'm just trying to use basic tools that most anybody can buy locally. So MIG welder, you can usually buy them at local places. Most people have them. Alright, also using this small tubing I've got, it's just scrap pieces. I'm also going to use this to clamp in here just to temporarily kind of keep this even. That way you don't get one too much higher than the other. Just makes it a little easier. I'm not going to leave it in there and weld it, but I am going to put it in there enough to hold everything in place where it needs to be. And you can see we've got a couple of tacks. They're not super great. I'm gonna clean them up, and whenever we do our finish welding, I'll clean it up and do a little bit better. We've got a few tacks on the inside, just trying to keep this lined up, because this opening right here, this is how your doors open and close. You want it as lined up as you can. That way you don't have any problems later when you go to refit the door tops back on. I'm probably going to do this. I'm going to finish the other side and get it tacked in, and then I'm probably going to call it a night because I have to work, and we'll be back hopefully tomorrow or later this week to get the rest of it tacked in and ready to go. I'm fixing to see if we can finish the A-pillars and see if we can get some more done on this. I'm going to have to make a filler piece here to fill this in and this in. I don't know if you can tell, I've kind of got it roughed up. It's close, it's hard to see, but you can kind of see how my tab in the back is holding everything up somewhat so that it's close to where it needs to be, so that it'll save later on in sheet metal work if you get it at least close, instead of having a big flat spot in the middle. I'm gonna have to cut these old welds here, which is fine. They're kind of rough looking, but I'm gonna cut the inside here, pull it out a little bit. That way everything's even, and that way the metal work can be done, because the closer you get the metal work, the whole lot less body work you have to do. So we're gonna come around the back. I've got a few tack welds back here, just little small ones. They're not super great, but they're enough to hold it, just to keep the sheet metal from moving too much. I may have to do some stretching in the sheet metal area right here to get it out a little bit, but everything seems to be coming together pretty close. If you look here, you can see the misalignment. I'm going to cut on the inside right here. There's already not much metal there as it is because of these factory holes. I'm going to trim this with the grinder and then cut here and see if we can pull this out just a little bit. Okay, I've got it cut using this old wood chisel. Kind of pull it out and you can see how it lines back up a little bit better. I'll probably have to do a little hammer and dolly work and then tack it and get it into place. And then as soon as I get that done, we should have it kind of evened up. You want to jump around on your tacks. You don't want to just sit there and keep welding, because if you try to weld it solid with a MIG welder anyway, you can end up messing up stuff. It probably won't be so bad on this because there's a lot of strength here with all the different bends and everything, but you want to make sure you bounce around to kind of keep the heat from getting too heavy, because if it gets too heavy it starts warping the sheet metal and then you have other problems later on. So, or you end up with a bunch of body filler that you don't want in there. And I want to try and metal finish this the best I can before we do any kind of body filler type work or anything like that later on. Hopefully you can hear me over my welding machine. It's kind of loud. I cleaned this up a good bit, got my wire ready, and we're going to try to see if we can get this ticked up a little bit better, and then I'm going to try to grind it down and somewhat metal finish it afterwards. Let me go get my DA sander, and then I'm going to go over this with the DA sander and it'll clean it up, and then I'll show you guys the finished product. And I don't know how well you can see it. There's a few little spots up here I need to finish, but it looks a lot better than it did. There's no more gaps in there or anything like that. And what little bit is left to do shouldn't require much filler. I may work on it a little more, fill in some of these little pinholes, and see there's a little bit of a low spot right there. But as you can see though, looks a lot better than it did. So now we just got to do it at all four of the other corners in the roof.